Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the AHA podcast. Alyssa, welcome back. How was your vacation? We missed you last week.
Thank you. I missed you guys too. It was wonderful though to get away. Went to Ireland, had an amazing time. But Mike Yazzie did a great job too. I watched it. It was awesome.
Oh, good. Yeah, it was fun to have Mike in it. It'll be fun to have guests from time to time. So today we're going to cover a little more detail than usual on a little more serious topic than usual. And it's under the guise of successorship planning. And so, first off, Jennifer and then Alyssa, over the years, the 21 years, Advocate just became legal to drink. We had our 21st anniversary, which is exciting. Tell me some stories over the years where you've seen people need to transition or need who had or who didn't have a successorship program and what kind of impact there. Go with you first, Jen.
Me too. Okay, great. Well, hello everyone. And gosh, I can't believe that's been 21 AEPs. And here we are getting prepped up for the next one. So it's exciting. And I just absolutely love working with agents and agencies. So it's a pleasure. Happy 21 to Advocate. So the successorship topic has been really hot lately. First I'll just say that, if you think about 21 years now, you have agents that maybe got into this business when they were in their 40s and 50s. So now 20 years later, they're kind of ready to think about retirement. They're worried about like if something happens to them, how do they keep that revenue flowing? We have, because the average age of an agent, is somewhere in the 50s, right? When they're dealing with beneficiaries, we find that, we have a lot of young people that are in the business and we have people as young as, just getting their license and they're like 18 to 21 years old. But we have a lot of agents that are older. We had, I think, one of our most famous stories of an agent that was 90 something years old when he
I
was
think it was
before he retired.
96.
96 before he retired. But, on
And
average,
he
they're in
fought
those
with
like
Patton. He fought in World War II with Patton,
unbelievable.
and he
Yeah.
staffed at Walmart. He was in Arizona. I
Yeah.
remember because we did a podcast with him, and someone got his name and called him. Said, "Hey, I heard you're still selling like 100 sales a year."
So
He
good.
literally told us stories about Patton. So we have from 18 to 94 right now.
Wonderful. Yeah. So it's a topic that comes up a lot. And I think it's really important. People want to understand what they need to do in order to preserve that revenue to come into their loved ones and to just what the different options are. So we have a lot of suggestions. It's a little bit of a complicated discussion, but I think we're going to talk more about that. And I'd love to turn it over to Alyssa to kind of touch on some of that and we can make it a dialogue. So,
Well, before she does get into the details, though, I want to hear some real life stories, Alyssa and
oh,
Jennifer. Right, this is
okay.
like a thing that you've seen many times, and you're right, Jennifer. The population is aging, and but even if it isn't a successorship program and you just want to retire, the biggest thing I hear is that they want someone to take care of their book. And we had like Charlie Schmidt. He didn't retire for so many years because he was just afraid there wasn't anybody that would do it like he did it. And that's one of the hallmark signs is the agent cares first about the lives that they've been serving all those years. And the financials tend to come after that. But go ahead, Alyssa.
Mhm. Yeah, a couple real life examples come to mind that we've experienced over the years. One, I remember we had an agent who had worked for us with us for years, who was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And in that situation, he was an individual. He didn't have an agency, but he had some time to pre plan and prepare. And he worked with us to get his daughter licensed so she obtained her license, she got contracted and then got certified with the carriers so that he could then transfer his book of business to her and she would become the agent. So in that situation, I mean, he had time to prepare. Not everybody has that. We have a situation, a real life situation, which is very sad, where agent he had an agency and passed away completely unexpectedly. That's a situation where, his spouse is left to kind of scramble to figure out what to do with his large book of business and his agency. So those are two, real life examples of things that we've experienced that we've dealt with. And there are others that we've helped transition out of the business. Maybe they, like you said, want to retire, and they're looking forward to just making sure their book of business is taken care of. And I think that's what we help with so well. We don't just take their book of business. It's about making sure that their members are taken care of, and that transition is easy on everybody. So that's so important.
Yeah, the good news is there's a solution, right? And the answer is a
Yes.
little bit different depending on what the particular situation is
Situation.
with that agent or agency, but we've been able to always work it out. And even when something happens really sad and unexpectedly, with our connections with the carriers and our understanding of the process, we can really help. And so, yeah,
Well, I wanna go back, Alyssa, to
Mhm.
the first example you gave because,
Mhm.
there's a little more gravity to the second example, but the first example, I think, is kinda what I would think is probably the more common, right?
Mhm.
So there's some event, whether it's retirement or a medical issue, and we've got a wonderful, group of agents that have beat cancer and come back and, sold through their therapy, so
Mhm.
certainly a lot of grit out there and a lot of loyalty to their clients that they are fiercely loyal to and serve. But I think it's ideal when you transition to a loved one or a friend. In your case, you said the daughter got licensed, and we helped her through that process and train. And tell us some of the merits of that because that was proactive, and just talk us through some of the high level things that would happen there and why it's
Yeah.
good.
So I think being proactive obviously is the best case scenario if you can. We've had some agents who have formed LLCs and put together kind of a more corporate structure for their agency where they have, written things in place for who would be a successor, who would kind of take over the business. Maybe they already have somebody who's licensed and gets contracted. So someone that is already maybe a partner in their business or could take over that principal agent role if they have to. So I think those are examples of ways that you can be proactive is just having that plan B within your corporate structure, your agency structure, having that partner. Otherwise, like I said, not everybody has an adult child or somebody that they can rely on to get licensed. But if they do, a spouse, um, somebody like that, I think that would be ideal. And that is, again, something that we can help with.
Yeah, and it's ideal, I think, because they're a known entity.
Hmm.
It was proactive, but you also have someone who's actually going to do the business. A lot of
That's
people
right.
think, "Oh, I'm gonna go buy a book of business," and then you just own the book of business, but there's a lot of work that comes with taking care of clients throughout the year, and, those touch points are the difference between, the book going away, and staying because there's a lot of touch points throughout the year. And then, Jacqueline, you've seen a lot of this recently. You and Jennifer, I know, are working on something that's a very sad situation. What are some of the important things to take care of and some of the windows? Because there's not an unlimited amount of time to do it if it's after the fact.
Yeah, unfortunately, depending on the situation, the biggest thing that we talked about was continuity of service of the book of business and making sure that those clients are still being serviced. And part of our job is to, understand all the carrier processes for how these transfers work. Every carrier has their own rules and forms and process about things, and
So they're not
uh,
all the same.
they're
It's
not
not
all
like
the same.
one size fits all.
That's right, and, there is even a couple carriers that I know don't even really have a formalized process yet, but most carriers do, that's the good news, and there are certain time windows. So unfortunately, some of the, larger health plan partners that we work with, they do have these windows that they provide where, in the event that an agent, passes away unexpectedly and it's in more of an after the math sort of thing, they like to see action taken typically within 60 days, earlier the better, to transfer that book of business to a qualified successor. So that agent would also need to be contracted and certified for that carrier as well, and also within those same states that those clients reside in. So we look at all of that too, and then sometimes if there needs to be like a third party to sign off on that form because that agent's not there to sign off on it, then we would get a third party, like a state planner, family member involved too, and help them through that process. We actually submit those forms to the health plan and keep track of that in that approval process.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And so, to any of you, about how long do you think it takes? So, if I'm an agent and maybe I'm thinking about a couple of more years in the business, how far out should I start planning? How far out should I call advocate for help? What are the kind of milestones and timelines?
Ooh, that's a good
It's
question. Yeah.
Yeah, that
What do you
is a
think?
good question. Well, I was going to say, obviously, the sooner the better. So, in the case of the first scenario I gave where, he had the illness, so he knew kind of that he had a set amount of time, basically. He worked with us, and I want to say it was like maybe a 6-month process because his daughter that he was getting licensed had to start from scratch. She had to go through the coursework, she had to take the test, she had to get fingerprinted and just do all the things and get contracted and certified. I think,
Well, how
starting
long does that
now.
take, Alyssa? How long does it
Well,
take
that's
to
what
get
I
the loved ones
well,
set? It's got to be a couple months, right?
yeah, I mean, in that scenario, I think it took about 6 months, but I mean, it could be sooner, depending on the state and what you have to do. I mean, it could take a month or 2, but it could also take 6 months. So I feel like the sooner the better. And then obviously, if it's unexpected, like the situation that we have now, where, the person passed unexpectedly, uh, immediately we want to jump on that, like Jacqueline said, where, we might need to move things within 30 days. Because the flip side is if you don't do anything, those members could become just what they call house accounts or
Carrier.
house members, kind of orphan, right? And they go to the carrier and they don't have an agent assigned to them. And that's why it's so important that we jump on it and help and assist with moving those. And the other thing is, Medicare Advantage isn't like other lines of insurance where in the case that the agent or agency principal passes away, that business can just move to somebody else. I think a lot of agents don't realize that if they do want to move their book of business to another agent, that agent has to be contracted and certified and like Jacqueline had mentioned, in all the states. If the agent writes in multiple states, they have to be contracted and certified with the health plan to do the Medicare Advantage business.
So we really have two different rule sets, right? You have the Medicare Advantage rules with the carrier and
Hmm.
the federal rules that govern how you can get paid. So you,
Hmm.
you you won't get paid if you're not licensed and certified. And then, Jacqueline, there's state rules too, which are separate in terms of a temporary license, right?
Yeah, that's more for the temporary license part is more like for an agency entity, and it varies by state too. But the tricky thing is that's more for the entity maintenance and enclosure. The carriers don't necessarily acknowledge that license. Alyssa, I verified that too. So the best thing to do there is just to make sure that you have a qualified successor as best practice, and then also or like a qualified agency entity that's contracted and licensed appropriately.
Right,
It's
because even though the state has tried to make provisions, because the insurance licensed insurance professionals have been around for a long time, so they know these things can happen. But
Yes.
what they've done at the state level doesn't remedy the federal problem in dealing with Medicare Advantage and the rules around payments and that govern payments of commissions to licensed agents with the Medicare Advantage credentials.
Yes, I say we're all subject to the rules and approval of the carrier, so we can submit the forms, we can fill them out accurately, but we're all subject to their approval. And that's why when you see, even if there are book of business purchase agreements or arrangements, there is that language in there that, once it's subject and it's effective, then we can work it out. So that's why there's language in there like that too. And there is also like documents that are sort of best practices. So we have a kind of a successorship 101 education. We have an Advocate University that's out there right now that our agents can watch. And it kind of goes over, what successorship is, what to think about, because not everybody, has somebody in mind when they want to, plan this out. They might not have a family member in the business or an agency that they work with too, and that's when they, will think about that, with Advocate and see what could work out. I just had an agent yesterday call in and ask, hey, I do have a son in the business. I want to be proactive with making sure that in the event of anything happened to me that he would be taking over the book, and he is licensed, and that's like an ideal situation, right? So he wanted to know what can he start thinking about. I did supply him with a letter template that we do use. It's just a good practice, to have in place. It's a springing of intent letter or intent letter where you can document your wishes for how you want your clients to be served. And it just helps reinforce the forms that we submit to the carrier, like, hey, this was written and documented before. It just helps the case, it can't hurt it. It can only help. And it documents it too, because it's not only just the event of sadly, death, but it's also what if you're just in a position where you're still around, but you're just unable to service the book. So it addresses that too.
I love that
Yeah.
you have that, Jacqueline. And I was going to say, the good news for anyone listening to this is not to be scared, and it's to be proactive, but also just to know that there is a process. And then, letting us know the wishes. We keep track of that for our agents. And to your point, Jacqueline, having that, even that intent letter that they could utilize, or just something in writing that they keep with a loved one, so that in the event that something happens, you can present that to your FMO that you're working with to help you. Most of them should know how to do that. I know we're very familiar with it. And as time has gone by, we've had to really vamp up that area a lot more and really work with people. And so the answer is a little bit different depending on what's coming at us. But at the end of the day, we want to do what's right across by the beneficiary, by the agent, and the wishes of what they would have wanted. And so that's that's the guiding principles I think that we try to follow there. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, Jennifer. And Jacqueline, I think Advocate could help out sometimes, and not just in facilitating it, but we would actually buy the book of business in certain circumstances, right?
Yeah, we reviewed some of that and we have assisted a few agents with that too. I think we were talking about ages of agents, the oldest agent where we actually helped, and it made sense, right, from a continuity of service perspective, where we felt comfortable to continue that service and that we were going to be able to provide that, was an agent that was 83 years old. And, she was very happy to do what she did. And she just knew she was her own client. So she actually transitioned herself to be serviced by us.
That's
So
funny.
she would call into our client care team. We're like, hey, how's it going? She's like, I'm doing great. And so she was actually, a part of that, which is really unique, which is awesome. And, she calls occasionally and we help her out. And it's awesome when you're an agent and a client, you get both experiences.
Yeah. Well, thanks for all your good work in that space. And I would say, Advocate isn't in the business of acquiring for the sake of acquiring. But, if you worked your career and you need help with an exit, whether it's just transitioning the book or to a loved one, all those different circumstances, we're here to serve our agents and help them serve their clients. And so that's kind of the guiding principle. So any takeaways before we move on to other topics? I think, Alyssa, you said, no, Jennifer, you said sooner, not later. um, Alyssa, you said that it can take time, and Jacqueline, you said there's a lot of different rules. There's legal rules, there's commission rules, there's state license rules, right there. You're going
Yes.
to get into a lot of different professions there. You said an LLC, so we help business entities set up. That's the State Department of the state.
Yep, and there's rules too there about like LLCs and or entities that are incorporated that are also licenses, with an agent in charge or principal agent, and if there's one or two, if that's the only one, and the timing too of like, in the event that somebody passes, there's like a 30-day window usually for most states to notify that, the agent in charge, deceased or passed. And typically anything that you write down or intent, it's good to work with an estate planner too and make sure any documents that you write down and it's filed and acknowledged with the state.
Yeah. Yeah, and the state wants an agent in charge, right? They want somebody accountable, and that comes with a responsibility. Okay, so to a lighter topic, Jacqueline, I think you sat on a policy call today where the deputy director of all of CMS had an overview for us and some insights. You want to share some highlights of that?
Yeah, we heard today on a webinar from Christina Ritter's deputy director of CMS, Centers for Medicare, and she offers some insights on kind of recapping where CMS currently is today with some of their uh, strategy and looking ahead too. So they acknowledged a few different areas. They talked about prior authorization, revamp, and all the good things that we hear from CMS on their work. She also made an interesting comment about kind of the Inflation Reduction Act and understanding kind of how that's made an impact out there for plans, and they kind of want to see a path for stability, which is great. Also, she acknowledged that that kind of message we're hearing from CMS that they're sort of open for business. They really enjoy working with stakeholders, and so they're open to listening to any problems out there and also us presenting a solution to that problem too, not just voicing a problem. And so I like how, open-minded she was about that and to reinforce that. There's some interesting things in there too. I'll have to go back and listen to.
Yes, I thought the health tech. I had to look at my notes. She said health tech is a big issue both inside and outside of the organization. And she said, stay tuned for more on health tech. And she also said that they read every single comment. Her and then Brittany, who used to work there, they were basically saying that we read every comment. And what was surprising to them is that every year there's a comment that makes them go, wow, I did not think of that. And they take it serious. They want to hear from the field. And then, as Jacqueline said, they don't want you to gripe. They want you to educate them. And she said it's our responsibility. I was a little surprised by that because I wouldn't have thought that they would think that. But the mindset of a 20-year veteran who's had almost every job at CMS, she said it's our responsibility to inform them. So if we see something that isn't right, we need to write it down, we need to explain it, and we need to do it in a way that makes them understand or allows them to understand how it's harmful and counterproductive to the goals they have, which they want people to have the right to be able to choose a plan that meets their needs. But they want the competition, they want to reward good behavior, they want to align incentives. So they're very consistent in that. And they want stability. So they're not happy about all this nonsense that's going on and the value going down, commissions getting cut. But I don't want to go down. We beat that horse pretty good last couple of sessions. So Jennifer, what's the tea? Let me know what's the last several agent phone calls you've been getting. What's on their minds lately?
Well, you put me on the spot there. I guess I would just say out there right now, I'm seeing a lot of things posted on social media about the most recent hearing that happened earlier this week. Was that earlier this week? And there's concerns obviously because in that hearing, we had a New York senator state, that they think that they should basically brokers are getting paid too much, right? So a lot of the conversation I have is, agents that are concerned about this. But to your point where you say they're open and they want to hear what's going on in CMS, I think, you're always going to have folks out there talking about things and having their agenda. So what we can do is we can make it known what agents do in the field to help people. And the response can be just explaining how a beneficiary is helped. We already know that most beneficiaries choose a broker agent when they decide what plan they're going to choose. So 90%, right? We said that on last podcast. And so it's just
95.
really, yeah, I'm really having those dialogues to put people's mind at ease on that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, I followed up with our policy folks and a couple of fun facts. What percentage, I'll ask you guys, what percentage of bills, like you just saw that bill or that proposed law, what percentage of those do you think actually go from proposal into an actual law?
Two
Oh.
2%. It's
Yeah,
like
I'm guessing a
Come on,
really small
Jacqueline, you knew
Come
the
amount.
on.
answer.
Sorry.
You're
Yeah.
you're a ringer. That's so
20%.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not 98% don't make it. 2%
Oh,
make it. Jacqueline knows
Jacqueline
that
knew.
because I told her.
Sorry.
Sorry.
She's like teacher's pet. Um, no, but and then I call and another thing, another action item for agents is get to know your local congressman. Like now, I'm lucky because my local congressman is also on Ways and Means and also on the healthcare subcommittee, so that's a little more of an official oversight role. But you can check with the legislative director in their office. You don't even have to bother the principal, and you can say, "Hey, does this have traction? Right? Is she gonna? You think she'll get somewhere?" Now they don't know 100%, but they have a pretty good feel for what's getting momentum and what's not. But more importantly, is you can just reach out to your local congressman. They'll be happy for the support, and you can offer to solve any Medicare related issues that you can help with. A lot of people just don't know how to get, Part B, or they've got some technical question, and you can be a resource for that office. And also, you can, if you want to support them, but you can build a good working relationship and have a little insight into the system. So I think that's helpful. And then on that particular issue, I don't think they'll get the traction. And I thought that they were very um, sort of inappropriate when they made the number 10 billion sound so big. And Jacqueline did the math for me on that. And they took old numbers that didn't even exist at the time that they're reporting on, and they just extrapolated some numbers to make it really big. And then Jennifer, I know you commented and they didn't reply, but it, it's 10 billion, which isn't the right number, but compared to trillions, right? And so what they don't show is the post-enrollment services and the things that Jacqueline's team does every day to keep people out of the emergency room. Dr. Oz said 25%, I think it was 24. I think 1 in 4 people that go into the emergency room have harm done to them in some way, which she said is the worst kind of care because not only did you harm someone, you got to go back and give them the care to fix it, what you did. So um, and the things that happen are, not medical errors. They're someone who ran out of their transportation benefit on their plan, and they're calling the emergency room to get dialysis in the emergency and an ambulance to take them to the emergency room, and that just puts them at risk. It burdens the system, and really, Jacqueline gets community transportation resources all the time when people exhaust their plan benefit, and we get them to the dialysis center where they should be going. So breaking down those barriers or bridging those gaps, that prevents so much, so much. Alyssa, what are you hearing? You talk to agents almost every day, if not many times. What's
Yeah.
what's burning up the airwaves from your end of the perspective?
So, this is more of like a housekeeping item if you're in the Medicare space. Obviously, it's research time and it's almost time for like first looks to come out from carriers. So, agents are already asking, hey, kind of what are you hearing about 2027? Like, what are you hearing about this carrier? What are you hearing about this expansion or not expansion or service area reduction? So they're having a lot of questions about that. And then of course the recertification timeframe. Today's the 17th, and it opens up next week. AHIP and all that comes out next week for 2027, which is unbelievable. And of course, we jump on it and try to get that done as quickly as possible. And then the carrier certs usually follow like within a day or two, maybe a week or two, but shortly after. So that's something that we're starting to think about. And then, of course, because I deal with compliance, um, there's marketing material to be reviewed and submitted, and just any marketing stuff that we want to go through and kind of update and change. Not a lot of marketing rules changed in the final rule. So I think we're going to be pretty steady for our marketing material in 2027. But of course, we revamp our whole catalog. But Also, Darwin, you were talking about, getting in touch with our local Congress people and our politicians and educating them. I think that this bill that was just introduced about the agent compensation, uh, it it was just I think it's a lack of education because as I was reading it, I just was like, there are caps on commissions. There are, rules about trips and incentives and things like that that are already in place, and it just felt so,
Yeah.
misinformed, and I
It
just
was
wanted to,
terribly
like.
misinformed. They're
Yeah.
solving yesterday's problem. They're solving a
Yes.
5-year that
Like,
problem was solved 10 years
10
ago,
years.
and the MedPAC, witness said, "Hey, listen, if you wanna make Medicare Advantage better, that's not the lever. Don't be beating up the brokers in the field that are the last mile of, helping beneficiaries. There's many other more fruitful things to go after."
Absolutely.
Well, let's end on a high note. Jacqueline, tell us one client care success story. Next week, Alyssa, you should do some agent care success stories.
Will do.
Um, Bring us home on a client, in the last week or so. Tell me a client that you or your team helped and how they're better off.
Yeah, I think recently we had a case for a very significant bill because most of our cases, especially right now, are bills and claims that we resolve too. And one of the ones I just came across was a member received a bill for $5,600 for an outpatient surgery that she received, and it was actually a network facility and well beyond the maximum out of pocket. So we kind of put a question mark, knowing that something was not billed correctly, most likely. And come to find it out that we actually, like members can sometimes be confused when they get a provider statement in the bill. It might not always be processed through insurance yet. So actually it'll just be an auto forward system that will just go to the member and it won't even be processed. It actually say this is not a bill, but you don't always your eyes don't always go to that directly. Your eyes as humans, we just go to the number and we just get concerned. And so it'll just say call your provider office on there, and they called our client care team, and we were able to talk to the provider office actually and understand where they were in the billing process. And the initial bill didn't go through because of some coding, which we helped with the health plan resolve, and it got resubmitted, and they owed like $40 actually. So we say if there's something that doesn't look right, don't just like pay it. Ask and make sure. Talk to the doctor, talk to our team, the health insurance plan. And so that's a really big difference, right? So just paying attention to those forms, and don't be scared. You have a lot of resources. You have your agent, we have a client care team, and
So you
so
took the bill from over 5,000 to 40 basically by being an interpreter between the beneficiary, the provider, and the health plan.
that's right. And then sometimes too, the way that hospital systems bill insurances, they'll do like a bundling payment system that maybe the insurance doesn't approve that service bundled under certain CPT codes. So they'll actually want that hospital to rebill it correctly, but they don't, go out of their way to tell the hospital to do that. You kind of have to get in there and say, okay, let's come together and figure
Yeah.
this out. And then all of a sudden, within 30 days, the member finds out there's really not a $5,600 bill. It's just $40, which is your coinsurance as subject to your summary of benefits or evidence of coverage, which what she expected going in.
Yeah, I remember that call that when we were doing quality assurance, and I could hear the lady call about the bill. And when you said, "I can help you with that," she said, "Oh, thank God." And you could hear the emotion and the sigh of relief in their voice. I'm
Yeah.
not sure CMS understands how much help people need to sift through those documents that are. It's there if you know how to use them. And this, it's like I always say, pick up the phone, right? Just pick up the phone.
Well, that eliminated a potential complaint for
It
that
sure
member to
did.
call CMS
For
because
the
it was just
agent, that's right.
right. So it was just resolved, and there's those good news stories all day long. So good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
what gets
not only did it resolve the complaint, people tend to blame the insurance plan when things go wrong, right? So even if it's not the insurance company's fault, when they get a outdated provider list from their primary care doctor and they call the first three optometrists on there and none of them will see them, they're not mad at the doctor who gave them the list. They're mad that they got bad insurance, even though it's just an outdated list. And so, being the good faith communicator there, that solves all kinds of problems. And I would just say, in closing, it's also it's not just the education; it's the expectation setting, and satisfaction is largely driven by not just the education, by expectations. Right? Is 30 days a long time or a short time to see the doctor, right? You gotta let them know what to expect. So don't just educate them. And there's of course there's standards of care and how soon and under what circumstances to be seen. And that's what we do that's unique. We're on the front end, brokers are on the front end of that. They people call them early when they enter the value stream and they start to shop. And that's a unique thing that we have because of our position in the value stream. And so we can make the most of that, and then that shows up later, bearing dividends for all that really prevention beats cure. And Medicare Advantage is the ultimate preventative medicine. So thank you, everybody, for
Thank
time
you.
flies. I just can't believe we could talk for another hour. But thank you, and look forward to talking to you next week for another edition of the AHA podcast.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.